So yeah, we're now in session 4, and really, we saved the best to the last. We're going to have a very interesting session, I have no doubt. This session is, how do we secure multi-cloud environments, and what better way than to have certainly a guest from Microsoft, Shay Amar. Welcome to SOC Masterclass, to Saggie, who's CyberProof Cloud Security Solutions Architect, Team Leader. That's a very long title. And Yuval Wollman, he's President of CyberProof. So what I'd like to do, I'm going to hand off to Yuval, but just maybe we can just do a quick introduction of who you are and what your kind of high-level role, just so that people can get a context of what you do day to day. Thank you.
Thank you, Howard, for helping us to kick that off. That's it. First of all, I think we had a wonderful day so far. I hope that the last slot will not be the least. And probably this is one of the key topics that we want to discuss. There is a reason why such top talents as Shay and Saggie are focused on cloud. The market asks for cloud solutions, multi-cloud specifically, and I'm very excited to be hosting this panel. Shay, you are one of the experts, Cloud Defender in Microsoft. Would you like to introduce yourself in a few words, and then I'll hand it over to Saggie?
Yeah, thank you, Van. Thanks for having me. So like you've said, I'm Shay Amar, coming from Microsoft. Actually, I'm part of the product group, which is Microsoft Defender for Cloud, and I'm part of the engineering team. So I'm very happy to be here and share some knowledge. That's all.
Thanks, Shay. Saggie, who are you?
Hey, so I'm Saggie. I'm working in CyberProof, helping our customers build their next-gen SOC and focus around the Microsoft security. So very nice to be here. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Saggie. I think that, first of all, the plan is for us, we will run some polls. We will have some Q&As. I will ask a few questions. I will ask stupid questions. You will give smart answers. And then we will have some demo in between. So dear audience, stay tuned. It's gonna be fun. But it's mostly about the people who's running it. Less me, more Shay and Saggie. Thank you guys for joining. I think we will start with a poll, right, Howard? So here it is. Guys, take some time to fill it. It's a single choice.
We did this in the last stage, but last session. Maybe Shay, what would be your guess to be the most important? Let's do a prediction.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. That's a great question, by the way. So again, central platform could be one of the best, but I assume detection response could be the second. But Saggie, I will let you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the problem for me is the knowledge around so many services and so many cloud providers. But it is one of my biggest challenges.
Sure. Well, let's get the results. And then be good to see your reaction to that.
Okay, Shay was right. I think the central platform overseeing everything is number one, 60% we're seeing here. When it comes to detection and response, it is second. Definitely things that will help us to navigate through the discussion that we're going to start. So I will say a few words at the beginning. I think that the reason we're convening here is that the market already provides some solutions to those problems that we just identified. And the reason for that is that multi-cloud by now is not only a privilege, rather a necessity. Organizations around enterprises around the world, they need multi-cloud approach to manage their stack, to manage their data. There is no other way for many of us. And that summons many challenges when it comes to IT, but we're here to discuss security. How do we manage the policies? How do we oversee as we've seen in the poll, the multiple products and the multiple environments that needs to be ran through the multi-cloud framework. How do we protect? And this is the detection and response that we've seen. How do we protect the new attack surface? It's bigger now, it's more complicated. So these are the kind of questions I'd like us to address through the discussion. But I would also mention that it's not only, I mean, it's cliche, but it's not only challenges and problems, also an opportunity. Because if we address the multi-cloud security challenges properly, we can solve much more than we could in the past. The solutions that Shay, you're leading one of them, and Saggie, you're involved in many of them. Those solutions allow us to look differently at how we protect our enterprise and how we can leverage new policies, new approaches, and new products potentially into a consolidated effort, and that way to enhance our security posture. So I hope it's a good segue to start the discussion. Let me start with you, Shay, and ask you a quick question, and hopefully that can lead into the discussion. What are the threats and vulnerabilities in hybrid cloud deployments, specifically on deployments, lack of single identity, massive amount of services, and so on? I'd be happy to get your thoughts on that, and then we can take it from there.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a great one. So we used to say around this kind of areas of coming from the on-prem world to the cloud area is a lot of kind of opportunities of areas that we need to invest on. So the question needs to be, first of all, if we are knowing and aware from the threat landscape. And actually talking about acronym like landscape can sometimes confuse, but there's a lot of challenge when we need to mitigate the risk, right? And how to handle it. We are always differentiate between the proactive to the reactive area. So things like reduced visibility on control, it's something that customers like we are working with have more confidence when they used to say having on our on-prem environment. Now, when they're coming to the area of cloud, it doesn't matter which cloud vendor we are talking about, it's more to understand about the control plane and the data plane, right? Because then you feel like not everything is owned by you, is kind of to be a trust model. So we see a lot of some gaps that could be opportunity as well, like simplified identity areas, how you differentiate between IAM role, to duties, things like that. And it coming into the area like you have mentioned, Yuval, which is related to threats and vulnerabilities, because it's really can be something that is urgent if you have vulnerabilities on your machine. It could be not up to date, but it's a different story if that machine is exposed to the internet, for example, because it could put our environment really at risk, even it's kind of terminology when it's in production. And there is coming into another challenge. Do we really differentiate it between landscape? Like we used to say in the kind of on-prem world, landscape, like dev, staging, integration, prod. Now we're coming to the cloud, and the area is coming to be a little bit confusing, because we could say in Azure, for example, I have a prod subscription or a dev subscription, but if I will compromise the dev subscription, it also affect my other subscription. And this sometimes fall into the areas which kind of prioritization I need to take or handle when I'm actually focusing in a threat area. So when we say hybrid, it's always to become thinking in the strategy mode, not just about knowing how to secure your assets like machines, also think in a widely perspective of knowing capabilities around threat landscape across your cloud. It's a huge topic. I know probably you have discussed it earlier, but with regards to Defender for Cloud challenges and threat, we will try also to demonstrate some of the capabilities, but it's around to secure two mainly pillars: secure posture as one end and workload protection in the other end. And it's coming to be a kind of a great thinking to try to answer to what you have raised, Yuval.
Thanks, Shay. This is very insightful. Saggie, any comments from your end before I ask you some direct questions?
So yeah, I mean, I hear Shay, and it's so familiar because when we was on-prem, it was a little bit easier because we control everything, right? So we know exactly which VMs go to the internet. We have the DMZ zone. We have those kind of things. And as you said, we lost it in the cloud. And a good example is like Log4j, right? We have 5,000 machines with Log4j vulnerabilities. Where do I start, right? I mean, where are they? I mean, now understanding what is going to the internet, what have a critical access, it's a lot harder. So those are things that's really challenging when you go to the cloud.
Yeah, the cloud complicates things for sure. So let me ask you, Saggie. Earlier, Shay mentioned the identity challenge, right? How often we hear about the identity hygiene practices and why it is so important. Are there any other areas that often overlooked, maybe about the developments, network security? Saggie, please share your thoughts.
Yeah, so identity is important, right? I mean, one of the most important things, and we hear it a lot, is identity. Everything today is identity. But we often see, working with our customers and see others, attack scenarios that we see over the internet, we say that there are a lot of other important things that are very often easy to overlook. For example, in the network security, right? Everything that we are doing, everything is networking. So there is no real magic. Everything that we're doing when you serve the internet, when we deploy a service to the cloud, everything behind the scene is networking. And it's so important and it's often overlooked because of the complexity, right? I mean, it's hard. And when it's hard, people tend to put it aside because it's really hard and I don't want to deal with it. But this is a very important area. Together with that, and I think that Shay spoke about it and everyone talk about, is the misconfiguration, right? Now we have so many services, we have multiple vendors, multiple cloud, hybrid solutions, and services are, adding to our, from the vendors every day. So a lot of time, this small misconfiguration can really make the difference. And we see a lot of exposed data because of misconfiguration and things like that. So this is why it's very important to have some kind of a solution that can see your entire infrastructure and SaaS and PaaS services and trying to identify those misconfiguration. And that's thing that we heard a lot is the supply chain attack. So we often see and hear, and it's divided into two, right? We have the vendor world, which we see a lot of time like SolarWinds and other companies that we saw those breaches coming from those vendors. And on the other side, because of the investment in the cloud and the freedom that we have and the acceleration, we have a lot of dependency on open source libraries, right? So we build containers, we build applications, we rely on external libraries. This is why it's very, very important to make sure that we are not affected by those libraries and we are not, increasing the risks because of we are using those kind of things. So controlling those libraries and controlling those vulnerabilities, as we talked right now, is very, very important, other than identity.
Yeah, you know what? It's a good. Shay, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the story about where we are seeing our solution or our environment and which area is important, and identity is actually part of the story, right? Because compromised identity could come to be an issue when it's related to privilege or things like that. We used to say in the on-prem, put some firewalls, why? Put some kind of tools to help you to mitigate or detect those. But when it's coming to the understanding about the cloud area, you need to think a little bit different. If we used to say detect, right? And first of all, try to assume. So we said today, assume breach, right? Because it's terminology that you need to react fast. You could fall in a situation, even if you implement all the compliance and hardening, but even there, you still be able to get some endpoint or some developer, like Saggie mentioned earlier, that could put your environment in a risk and you need to react fast. Now you need to have a suite and we are focusing today on a specific product, but it could be something. You need eyes. You need tools that give you the visibility of that, and you need to know what to do with that, right? Because there is a really big difference between something that is raising, say, look, you have an incident, but then the question would be, do you know what to do with that incident? Because this incident could involve identity, it could involve security, a network security pattern that infect your infrastructure. Then you need to react about what already done, and you need to deep more with your tool, and I think it's making part of the story. So identity definitely fall into the scoring, or we used to say how much secure you are. We always like, to measure those by numbers. We say the higher number when we're talking about secure score and things like that. But when in falling the area of identity is actually working in the opposite, because the much easier that you are giving privilege because you are not familiar which privilege to give whom or what, because we use, again, to compare it to the previous world of on-prem, is a big different challenge when you're talking about cloud. You need to be aware from service managed identity, user managed identity. It could be even apps that is needing kind of, and then identity is more huge than what we used to know when talking about principles, Yuval. So I think it's
always,
yeah,
the context is much bigger than
exactly.
I agree with you, and that's actually a good opportunity to run the second poll. Howard and Lori, maybe you can help us. The second question that we have is, when it comes to security, what is your priority? So identity protection, network security, compliance and regulation, and DevSecOps. We can list more, but we put those four, and we'd be happy to get an echo from the audience. I hope not everyone will put identity protection, because we just talked about that.
Yeah.
Saggie, what is your best guess for the number one, number two priority?
I won't put number one because I think that we all know what will be there. But I think that we see it a lot is in the DevSecOps, right? We see a lot of the risks that come in from, as I said, for the supply chain and for the vulnerabilities. So I think that this would be, one of the highest. And I think that, we all know about the compliance and regulation, right? And how strict they can be.
Yeah.
So that will be.
The funny thing, if you look in those answers now, I'm looking at, and you can say, if I have a great regulation and compliance implemented, it could help me to actually, go through and help me to reduce my attack surface with respect to identity, network, and SecOps. But we will talk about it. It's definitely the approach.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, surprisingly, we have identity protection as number one, and then network security. And then compliance and regulation, then DevSecOps. I am surprised. Saggie, I would agree with you that DevSecOps is bigger, at least what we're seeing, right?
Yeah.
But that's okay. I think so far we will do the demo in a few minutes. I do want to go through a few more questions. So far we had we opened the discussion on problems and challenges. Let's start, not closing, but going into how we can potentially solve. So Shay, let me ask you about the MITRE ATT&CK framework that I think we all know. How can it help teams to prioritize risk? How can we map those risks and defend ourselves against them? How do you see that specific framework or others that you believe should be used?
Yeah, and actually the MITRE really can help a lot when it's coming to achieve the targets when we are trying to do some SOC investigation or threat mitigation or investigation. So it's all about the journey to know your threat, know your landscape, and the MITRE can really help you to understand in which stage of the, if we're talking about alert, for example, in which stage you are facing. Like if you are in the stage of exposure, it could be privilege escalation, execution, things like that. So it could help you to prioritize what we have explained earlier and give you kind of a footprint prioritization, who should you tackle first? But now it could be a challenge, right? Because you can say, okay, just a second, MITRE, it's a metric, right, of the trend landscape, and all of the tactics could affect. It's different between Linux, Windows, Kubernetes, storage accounts, what I need to do. So I say most of the vendors, specifically in Defender for Cloud, we will see that we always try to correlate recommendation and alert to the MITRE stage. And now you can ask yourself, fine, but again, how it could help me to mitigate the risk. Think about huge environment. Again, we are talking about cloud. It could be multi-cloud. You have multi-cloud, you have bunch of environment, 100, if not 1,000 of subscription. And then you found yourself like looking at in the main pillar of the security alert dashboard, and you have bunch of alerts. What will be the first question to ask? Most of the SOC analysts will tell you, we will prioritize. And then you ask, you prioritize against what? About you're thinking that the domain controller is most important if you're talking about machine, right? Then a SQL machine, or do you prioritize because it's contain like a secret store, Key Vault, and you said, oh, okay, but again, I didn't understand how it can help you to prioritize, and then you can find yourself in a situation you can say, let's make sure that I'm aware what already been done, right? There is a different approach when you're talking about the MITRE from the exposure scanning to the area when it's coming to privilege escalation, execution, and those steps, because this could really already show you that the attacker already there and he actually performed compromise and he just getting through via and try to expose, right? To expand his attack on the environment. So knowing MITRE is not just something you need to have as on your toolbox when you are doing kind of investigation or threat mitigation. It could help you to prioritize and also mitigate some of your threat landscape against your environment. It will help you with the measurement of understanding, and we will show this also with the correlation to the workbook later, with the ransomware, for example, which is a good one. And Saggie gave the example of the Log4j, but there is a lot of vulnerabilities that we are focusing every day. And one of the major ones is, I will not be able to patch all of my machines till tomorrow, right? It will take me time. Patching will take me time. It's a process, pipelines, updates. So how can I mitigate fast? And the MITREs can give you and actually combined to this kind of the story pillar when you are doing investigation based on the knowledge of hardening, recommendation, again, secure posture, and about mitigate and threat and even react to the alert that already placed and appears on your environment. So
you're saying the prioritization presented by the MITRE attack also takes into account the pace, the potential pace of recovery.
Yeah, and this is, by the way, something that we even ourselves working get the feedback from customers. Because you can find yourself in a situation when you have a bunch of alerts as a security stakeholders that need to do your regular, and then you can ask, okay, how can I handle this? It could be prioritization kind of matter, and MITRE's coming to help you in that place. In the other end, it could help you to differentiate it between things that you can handle maybe, I will say, in a later time and not to react immediately. So we are thinking about things like execution or privilege escalation a little bit different when there is a scenario like scanning or exposuring, for example, because it could be like, for example, brute force. Everyone can try to do brute force in my environment, but I want to know from that. But it's definitely different when someone already gets in and run some tools and do execution and privilege escalation, things like that. So it's helped me to mitigate the risk and also to react to that. So we are differentiated, and that's also the reason why we implemented with corresponding to the recommendation, also the part for the alert. So you will be able to see almost in every aspect, no matter if you are working with containers, Kubernetes, servers, SQL, or whatever, based on the secure posture and also on the workload protection with the threat security alerts dashboard, you will be able to see the correlation always to the MITRE. It's always there.
Yeah. Saggie, any comments on that?
You're
So-
on mute.
But yeah.
Oh.
So I'm really connected to what Shay said, right? I mean, brute force, for example, you want to know about it, but this is, I mean, everyone can do it, and this is not really, the main risk and the focus, right? I mean, this is where there are other things that Mike can help us to try and understand where the impact is bigger, right? The blast radius, as we love to say. And it's really coming together with the way in CyberProof, the use case factory approach. When we see it a lot, that sometimes customers care about the quantity of the detection rules, which we understand. I mean, the quantity doesn't come in saying that I have a lot of detection rules, I'm more protected, right? It's about understanding the risk, understanding exactly which areas, right, the impact will be higher, and focus on those kind of area and making sure that we provide those detections and response, correlated to the risk that related to our business business approach and business target, right? And of course, in the end, the business risks. So I'm really connected to what you're saying.
So let's expand this discussion a little bit. Saggie, this is for you. If you can, organization need to adapt themselves to the new landscape that we just touched, right? Through the acceleration of cloud adoption, security teams need to change their approach. If you can talk a little bit about how you see within a company, within the organization, how the different groups needs to be, take accountabilities, work together, different stakeholders involved. How do you see those developments in today's organizations?
Yeah, so yeah, you are right. I think that we saw in the last few years, thankfully for COVID, we saw the acceleration of the cloud adoptions, and we talked about it through the entire session until now, and it's always comparing the old world that we call the on-prem with the new world, which is the cloud. And if, as Shah said in the past, like put this firewall, put these things, and we have a centralized team and everything, the deployment of infrastructure, the configuration, everything was centralized, right? Whereas this traditional IT, they're doing those kind of things. And when we went to the cloud, one of the cloud promises is, the pace in deployment and going to production, right? I mean, we want to reduce the amount of time we go to production. And of course, we want to have this flexibility of using what we need and pay for what we need. And this made the security teams, it's forced them to decentralize everything. So right now, it's not only their responsibility and they are not controlling everything, right? So this is where we want to start working with other teams inside the organization in order to make sure that if it's coming for the development, so we know the shift left and making sure that we can, from one side, provide them the recommendation, see what everything that they are doing, but also provide them the accountability, right? We assign them the risk and making sure that they are also accountable for the mitigation of those risks and controlling those things. And, one of the things that I think we see a lot, and it's a challenge, is because of the vast services and the cloud provider and those things, we see a lot of third-party solutions, right, that try to mitigate those risks. So a lot of the time we see this challenge on finding the right tools for the right problems, and we end up with a lot of services. And this leads to a lot of, we call it dashboard fatigue. So now we have this analyst that need to jump from this platform to this platform to this platform to this platform, and so on and so on. And I think this is where we're starting to see, the security vendor trying to, centralize those solutions and provide this end-to-end solution, the single pane of glass that allow us in the security team to focus on one platform and have the visibility around our multi-cloud, around our services, and also allow us to interact with the different teams around those areas. So it's really no longer just the security value, it's become also, the financial value of then going and investing in so many other tools and work with so many vendors, then focus on one vendor that provide you, maybe not 100%, but very close to this 100%, and the value that you get is so high, then going to distribute it to so many other solutions out there. So I think this is where we see a lot of the challenges, right? So it's no longer just the security; it's also about the management, the governance, and the finance aspects.
Correct. I mean, it's a deep. I wouldn't say cultural change, but it's a broader change in the organization, and it requires across the board adjustment. Let's pause here with the questions. We are more than halfway through the workshop, so let's move to the demo, and then we will do some Q&A post demo. So I invite the audience to ask questions in the chat. Through it, we will address them. So let's start with the demo, guys.
Perfect. Let me try to share my screen and let me know when you're able to see it.
Yep, we can.
Awesome. Again, so we are in the center of Defender for Cloud, but it's really kind of approach, and we try to connect the dots about what we have discussed, and we try to make the demo as much useful as we can. So Defender for Cloud is a solution, again, I'm repeating that, for enabling capabilities like secure posture and workload protection. So now you will be able to see on the overview path, blade, that I am covering today, not just Azure. We used to say is a kind of solution to secure the Azure platform, but as of today, we are covering AWS and GCP as well, which meaning this is the context, by the way, of this masterclass session and protecting multi-cloud. Now you can ask yourself, what's the benefit? Like we have said, single pane of glass, give you flexibility, visibility around that everything is happening. Now let's focus about two acronyms, and then let's start to see how we actually connecting the dots around. So secure posture is the first pillar that we have mentioned earlier, which stands for capabilities around how secure I am against what? You can ask yourself, what is this score? How is it affect me? I am 41% of secure score against my Azure environment, 26 on my AWS, and 34. Is it good, bad, ugly? You can ask yourself those questions. So the question is coming to be, it really depends about how much secure you want to be and how this can be calculated. Everything here, and I will not go deep dive about calculations around this. What we're trying to do is to give a centralized story about all of my subscription and accounts, if we are referring to AWS account or GCP, and we try to combine them to the behind the recommendation that is combine them to a score. So every asset that you have on your environment is a part of the calculation that affect your security score. If I can, and wants to give an example, let me jump into the recommendation and show you what I mean by that. So let's assume that they have some potential weaknesses or misconfiguration, like we've mentioned, things that could affect my environment. So things that need to be aware of. MFA, you can say to yourself, okay, multi-factor authentication is not bad thing, but we are scoring this as the highest potential currently of max score against all the others. And Saggie, we have talked about it, and you can ask yourself, why MFA? Because we know that if you will enable MFA, like Yuval asked us about the identity, it will probably help us to solve a lot from the identity side, and we don't say all, but it could put our environment in a much perspective way. And I'm not getting in about how to implement that now, right? It could be a bunch and differentiate approach, and you could use conditional access. If it's Azure on AWS, you can enable it by either ways, it doesn't matter. But in the end, we try to give you flexibility about the hardening and things like that. But then you can find yourself and said, okay, what about management ports? Okay, let's assume that I forgot to do some firewall. And then you can ask, but in the on-prem, it could never happen. We always have firewall in front. All the machine was routing to the default gateway, but it's not the same way in cloud, right? Because when you provision machines, for example, it could be stuck to a specific VNet, and that VNet couldn't be traffic. If you implement things like CAF, Cloud Adoption Framework, things like that, probably you can mitigate that. But you can fall in a situation when the developer tried to do something, and then you need to solve it. Now you can ask yourself, okay, how it's going to look like. So when I try to mitigate those kind of recommendation, Yuval, if you remember, you asked me about MITRE, every kind of recommendation like here could put you in the stage of understanding which techniques and tactics is related to that. So we can see here a combination of what the attacker can use with respect to MITRE, and all of that can be relevant to this potential stage of the MITRE, and this is based on the recommendation. Now, it will not help me to prioritize, because then I could ask yourself, but there's a lot of them. But if I will solve those kind of issues on my machines, it probably makes sure that I'm actually more secure than I am. So in Bench, I will not go on each one of the recommendation. You can see a lot of stuff here. For example, we have added things like status for each kind of recommendation, because if I want to give Saggie, for example, to handle some of the recommendation and could assign to him, it could be a service ticketing mechanism. We try to improve and give that. And you see some insights, kind of flexibility here. This could give you some potential of responsibility, meaning you can even use our tool to do some fixes on your environment. Now you can ask yourself and say, okay, in Azure it sounds easy, but how you do it on AWS, for example? We will not ask the crowd now, but you can think about it. What we are doing, we are generating a script with an auto remediation, and then you can run it as part of your pipeline. For example, if I'm talking about AWS, for example, so every time that I will go, I'm having an option to filter my environment based on my kind of multi-cloud that I've connected to my environment. So you see, you're able to see Azure, AWS, and GCP. What I can do, I can just filter out only the one that is relevant, like AWS. And if I go to that account, I can definitely go and figure out which potential kind of things is exposed on my AWS. Again, if you noticed, I didn't change anything, just a filter. And this is what we have mentioned earlier, a tool that gives you visibility across cloud. Again, it's about eyes, it's about capabilities, it's about secure posterior multi-cloud environment. In general, most of the questions that are arriving from here is how I even start. You are showing us what's already there. So how can I start the journey if I want to do it tomorrow? So based on the configuration, I mean, the team here could help you with everything that you will need. But on the top of that, everything that you will connect to your environment will be measured as a kind of approach to be a connector. So a connector could be GCP account, it could be AWS account, for example. So everything that you will be able to see here is kind of a connector that we could connect to. So again, I'm just putting some dots about what we are able to see regarding secure posture. Now, again, it's good, right, Yuval? But then how we can prioritize? It's hard. If I will tell, okay, let's try to solve every kind of recommendation, Saggie, it will be probably a time-consuming task, right?
Right.
So how can you help us? So what we have pushed out, and we actually announced this recently over Ignite, so I'm happy to share it. You can see that we have pronounced a new capability, which is named as Attack Path. And what the Attack Path can give you, it can give you potential risk based on calculation on a graph algorithm that will try to examine which of those machines are, for example, I have Log4j, like Saggie, you said Log4j, for example. I have 100 machines with Log4j, but only one of them have exposure to the internet. So this kind of machine may be the one that will be relevant to tackle first. So this is what we are doing in the attack path. So this is kind of example you can see here. I have an internet exposed VM with an high severity vulnerabilities. It's a much different risk than handling vulnerability machine by machine, for example. Great work. So not just showing you which recommendation you need to tackle, also showing you the graph and the path around it. And this is capability that is coming under the CSPM area of capabilities. Great. What about workload protection? What about if something already done? Recommendation is good, but we don't have time to implement recommendation. So here we're coming to the area of workload protection. Workload protection is kind of the area when you want to focus after you enabled our plan. Defender for servers, for example, is one plan. Defender for containers is another plan. If you need to protect your storage account, it will be Defender for storage. If you need to protect your SQL or databases, should I say, so you can enable it. We're also covering AWS and GCP, like I mentioned. So every one of those workload protection seems to be a plan that you need to enable. And it will, based on pricing matter, I don't even remind the pricing, but it's something you need to measure when you estimate your environment and when you choose the solution. You definitely have the flexibility to choose which plan you want to enable as part of the onboarding. So let's see. I assume that you notice that I've enabled some of this plan, and you can be able to see here that I even have some alerts that is appearing in my environment. Let's see one or two examples, just to make sure that we are seeing. So I'm in the security alerts dashboard now. I have a lot of them, right? Like a suspicious use of partial detection. And I even have something like an incident. And then you can ask yourself, okay, what's the difference? So incident could be a correlation between multiple events, security alerts. So it's meaning that we see a reputational mechanism in our backend, and we found it could be relevant to trigger this as kind of a correlation of incident to that. So if I look to that to see, you also be able to see the MITRE correlation that Yuval mentioned and asked us earlier. So this is kind of example with respect to credential access. So if I will jump to some kind of example here, you will be able to go to the full details. And now there's a lot of questions that we are getting here. Do I need to use that dashboard? Yes, you can. Can I actually export this data and stream it to a SIEM/SOC solution? The answer is yes. So this is actually the cloud workload protection solution. And then you will be able to see what are the potential steps, for this specific incident, you will be able to see the specific alert. For this example is just a PowerShell. So you'll be able to see what has been running, like with the suspicious activity, who has run it, what is the process that was included with that, and what is actually done. Without going into deep dive details, you can ask yourself, okay, then what? I have alert, now I need to react. So what we are giving as part of the action is capabilities around how you could mitigate the alert, how you can prevent in the future those kind of alert, which things you need to be focused when you implement and secure your environment. And you can even react with some triggered automation response. Meaning that when we're talking about response, it's an automation way that you can involve logic app or workflow automation. So this is something you definitely can look at. So we covered CSPM in a nutshell. We cover workload protection. Specifically, I show a couple of examples around alerts that with respecting to servers, but there's a lot of more of that. Probably we can't cover anything like in bunch, but two more things maybe you could want to remember that we talked about CI/CD and pipeline. We also have integration today under public preview with the DevOps. So as of today, we are not securing just like in one of the questions that we have raised against cloud. We're also securing the pipeline. We have integration with Azure DevOps and GitHub, and which gives, again, single pane of glass, try to centralize all of that centric in the main pillar.
One thing, Shay.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I liked about DevOps security, and so there is a feature of, when you can decorate the pipeline, right? So this developer can run the pipeline, and he can get during the run of the run plan, he can get those information directly, or for example, Azure DevOps or GitHub, right? So he can know in real time exactly if there are vulnerabilities or there are any issues that we see together with Defender for Cloud.
Yeah, and this is actually summarize most of the things that we want to highlight to you. So again, if you can look at this bunch of kind of grouping recommendations that I'm looking at, you can see some of them are coming from my AWS accounts, some of them are related to Azure, some of them are related to GitHub, but all of them are centralized in one place, which make me, again, a kind of a starter to things that I want to react and try to help to mitigate in one place. Like Saggie said, every kind of pull request that will be done from the GitHub repository will be monitored. If someone, for example, for mistake, put some sensitive, we know how things could be going, right? Someone can put secret on his code and forgot to do a publish pull request, and then you need a tool to help you to mitigate that. So Saggie, like you said, this is a great kind of motion we see around it. Now we want to represent the dashboard, right, Saggie? Yeah, so let me try to jump in. I hope I've deployed correctly and do my homework well. So we have the MITRE dashboard inside the workbook pillar, but again, I've deployed this one. You want to provide some context, Saggie?
Yeah, so I think that this is kind of connecting a lot of the things that we talk about during this session, right? We talk about how we can get those recommendations and get those focus area that we need to work on, and how the MITRE framework help us, right? Understand exactly, and we can see here, for example, a dashboard, a summary of health overview by tactics, right? And we can see here exactly where our exposure is higher, right? We can see here that in the discovery tactics, we have a lot that we can work on, and this can give us the recommendation based on the tactics, and we also have another tab for techniques, right? Where we can see the same.
Yeah, now I'm thinking, yeah.
Yeah, and here we can focus on a specific technique and see in which area we are the most exposed, and we can also try and prioritize those things. Now, what we see in these two tabs is just numbers. We know the tactic, we know the techniques, and we know exactly how much are healthy and how much is unhealthy. The last thing that we can do is go to recommendation, and this is where we can see. You remember, you saw the recommendation that Shay showed in the class posture. So here in this workshop, we can see the recommendation based on the techniques that are focused on ransomware, right? So we can find here and see valid accounts and see exactly what are the things that what are the recommendations are and the focus on. And another thing that we did in CyberProof, and this is why Shay had to deploy it. This is a workshop that a workbook that we deployed and developed in CyberProof. We talked about the things about the change of the culture, right? We now need to work with other teams. We now need to work with other groups. So we had the ability to filter by tag. So if you can press on the tag, then we can decide if it's part of production, of pre-prod, if you want to go to a specific team, if you manage tags by teams, by environment. And this is how you can see recommendations that are only relevant to specific tags. In this case, we don't have any recommendation guided to those tags.
Yeah.
But then we can see it and able to see the recommendation specific to a group in the organization or an environment in the organization, and not the entire recommendation. It can help us drill down and focus on specific areas that are reported for us in this case.
Yeah.
And we can also share it with the other teams, and they can choose their tags and see exactly in which area they have recommendation that they can apply to their environment.
Yeah, and I think from the approach about severity, you can see healthy, unhealthy, and not applicable. This is the whole thing. So probably you want to focus about, first of all, unhealthy most of the time. But like Saggie said, it's a combination and a correlation between emotion on your team and on your environment to make sure that everything is there for you. Great.
Shay, Saggie, I know there are so many other things to share and present. First of all, this is still, it's 20 minutes, so it's high level. If the dear audience has any further questions, more details, please reach out to us. You have our contacts, and obviously contact us at cyberproof.com and other means to communicate. I wanna move. You know what? Last question for me to you, Shay. On that, you can say 2 sentences, no more than 2 sentences, where is it going to in your roadmap? What do you think the next big thing that you want to address as part of your offering? If you can refer to that, and then we go through some Q&A.
Yeah, so I mean, in the threat landscape, we know that when we're coming to a multi-cloud, we need to think in the correspondence of try to bring as much as we can telemetry and coverage. I mean, coverage with respect not just to things that we are securing in the area of Azure. As of today, we're giving flexibility also to cover AWS and GCP, but we try to make kind of a progress of improvement around the motion of give the aspect of prioritization. Things like I've showed earlier, it's kind to see the motion that when you're starting from your code, it doesn't matter if you're doing shift left migration or you're onboarding, because we already know probably you will use some cloud somewhere. And this is definitely when you could ask yourself to be a secure first. This is definitely one of our kind of achievement that we want to be as a powerful platform and to give this flexibility. So I see a lot of motion around to give that capability that's coming from the shifting left, right to the right, and also with respect to the workload coverage that we'll be able to provide in the product.
Yeah, makes sense. Only a few minutes left. Let me take some questions from the audience that we got.
Mm-hmm.
I see here, yeah, that's a fundamental one. It's both of you, whomever wants to start. Are the benefits of adopting a multi-cloud environment worth the increased risk in terms of data protection? Who wants to take it? Does it worth it?
Yeah, the question, yeah, go ahead. You want to take it?
No, take it.
Okay. So, I mean, it's always try to make us think about data protection. So, in a nutshell, every subscription, every account, and doesn't matter, I mean, not talking about Azure or any other cloud vendor, you need to have secure posture in place to make sure that you are somewhere know what are the gaps that you need to be, that you are focusing, right? Or you are tackling with. So in the end, if you're working with an R&D team, dev team, right, doesn't matter. If you are putting some workload, some compute, even there, you still need to advise. Now we are differentiated today between posture and protection, but if it's what, definitely it's what. Otherwise, you can put yourself, it's not you are secure by default. There's always, you know, the kind of, we hear it. I'm using a cloud vendor. He should secure me. No, it's not correct. It's a shared responsibility. So definitely you need to have solution in place, and you need to know and to have knowledge about what to do when you do right, like I've said earlier, and we have demonstrated. And terminology is definitely kind of a mindset, like you said, Yuval, Saggie, you highlighted as well, that we need to take as a journey with our customers to make sure that we helping them to be secure as we can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is one thing that in the Israeli Air Force that written on the wall. So it says that I will translate to English is that the one you can't see is the one that take you down, right?
Yeah.
So it's and you know we can answer those risks that we had, but we cannot provide solutions for things that we don't know.
Exactly.
Right. So
think always assume breach.
Yeah.
It always take you to a place that you still need to have the best tool, but it doesn't make sure that you are secure.
Yeah. No zero risk most of the time. Saggie, if you mentioned that earlier in one of the points you made. So let me ask you another question that I got. How do you suggest handling a multiple geolocation of each cloud environment from security perspective?
So for me, I think that geolocation shouldn't be a real challenge. We are working on most of the companies are global, and the world is shrinking, right? So together with it, so I think that people shouldn't be afraid of geolocation, right? It's okay. The thing is that the risk that we have is those geolocation that we are not familiar with, or those areas that we are not working in. Right? So if, for example, and we see it a lot with things like user entity behavior analysis, especially in Defender for Identity and Microsoft Sentinel, is that we want to focus on the geolocations that our workers are not working in. Right? Those are the things that these are the areas that we want to focus, and those are the areas that we want to to monitor. But other than that, I don't think that there should be any risk regarding geolocations.
Yeah. Shay?
Yeah, I mean, with respect to the product, you can definitely set your workspace as a concern, right, and restrict them to specific regions. But like we say, GPDR, an acronym like that, is always kind of matters. So definitely, most of the cloud providers today stick to that. So from that stage, I think it's a good approach.
Yeah, I want to do a round of conclusion, but before that, there is a very good question that just came. I will address it to the honorable guest, Shay, to you. How do you implement, and you can please be short, how do you implement zero trust in a multi-cloud environment, which has exponentially greater quantities of information associated with cloud-native environments? So how do you do that, the zero trust concept?
Yeah, I mean, we try to answer not specifically on zero trust, but as a model is like, in the acronym zero, mean that you don't need to trust about anything, from the identity to the network to the security. So it's not just having a tools like Defender for Cloud, it's a combination of toolset that you need to have from the endpoint corresponding to the identity across your infra. And this is kind of approach you need to think on which stages on my environment, not just talking about user endpoints, things like that, in a role aspect terminology about how to be secure without actually having trust on any of your layer. So we have a great kind of terminology explaining that based on CAF, Cloud Adoption Framework, and terminology, but it's all around understand the pillars and see the infrastructure as a one tier and not trust on every kind of layer. So this could be a good approach.
Yeah,
we can share some links. But
yeah. So let's wrap up. We don't have much time left. I would, you know what, Shay, your last sentence, and then again that myself.
Yeah. First of all, I really enjoyed this session. We should do it more. So, and I want to thank you for having me. So, from my end, just keep in mind, start use the product, reach out, make sure that you are secured. This is definitely something you need to be aware of.
Thank you, Shay. Saggie?
Yeah. So yeah, same. Thank you for having me here. I enjoyed and always happy. And yeah, visibility. Make sure that you have visibility on your environment, and just to say, we're in the mercy of the data that we have, right? So make sure that you cover as much as you can.
Yeah. Thank you, Saggie. Thank you, Shay. I would only say what I stated at the beginning, that this is where everything is going to. Thanks to the demo and the dynamics, the great dynamics that we all three had in this last 1 hour, and we've seen how the market evolves, specifically in the Defender presentation, and there are many solutions, ways to address those challenges, and I hope that our dear audience got a glimpse into what we offer. I really want to thank you again, Shay and Saggie, for your time. Much appreciated, and I hope to do that again soon.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And that was a really interesting session. And thank you, and have a great day. Bye for now.
One thing, Howard,
yes.
Before we close. So just for those who want, we do offer a workshop around Defender for Cloud and helping securing multi-cloud environment. And there is also, we have a program that maybe, if you fit, you can get a sponsorship for it. So you don't need to pay for it. So feel free to reach out if this is something interesting to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Good points. And thank you for doing the final plug. It's great. Okay. That's it for now. It's a wrap. Thank you. Bye for now.